So my first answer is in response to Celador, who's questioning my use of the language of quantum physics to describe insights into consciousness. And he's a physicist, a professional physicist, and he thinks maybe that my use of quantum physics is inappropriate. He's not familiar with the implications of quantum physics that I relate to. And by the way, that's a question that's frequently asked, so I'm glad you asked it. I have been trained in medicine, neuroscience and neuroendocrinology, which is my background, how our thoughts in our consciousness cause the release of neurotransmitters in our brain. And several years ago, I met physicists like Amit Goswami, who were actually taking the position that consciousness is the fundamental field of possibilities that actually creates space-time events within itself in consciousness, which we call thoughts. And these thoughts ultimately translate into biochemical or neurochemical, or you might say electrochemical messages in our brains. And that was how I started talking about quantum physics as an insight into the nature of consciousness. Now, most of you who are in the physics community are actually looking at the world through a physicalist ontology, which means that your basic premise is that the world that we experience through our senses is a physical world, and therefore one day when we discover the biological basis of consciousness, we'll know exactly how molecules produce thought, how matter produces mind. And this is actually the second most open question in science. The first most open question in science: what is the nature of the universe? What is the universe made up of? And that's the most important open question according to Science magazine, I forget which year, a couple of years ago. What is the universe made of? Because we now know that only 4% of the universe is regular atomic matter. 96% is dark energy and dark matter, and we have no idea what it is, but it's not atomic, so it does not reflect light, absorb light, emit light, etc. So we have no idea, and yet it is the scaffolding of galaxies. Dark matter is the scaffolding of galaxies. Dark energy is what is moving galaxies apart from each other, and it actually, in some way or the other, is responsible for the 4% that we know exists out there as regular atomic matter. In fact, if you exclude interstellar space and the dust in interstellar space and hydrogen and helium, then the amount of regular matter that forms galaxies is 0.01%. Okay, and in science there's a presumption that this matter ultimately created the brain, which created thoughts. This is a metaphysical presumption, because the second most open question in science is: what is the biological basis of consciousness? How do molecules produce thoughts, or insight, or intuition, or creativity? Do we have free will? What is imagination? It's a big struggle, because not only is science unable to prove that, science doesn't even have a theory of how. Science doesn't even have a theory of how molecules produce thought. So many years ago, when I started talking to other physicists, I said, could it be that we are asking the wrong question? Instead of asking how do molecules produce thought, should we be asking how does thought produce molecules? The other way around. And fortunately, I've had the opportunity to collaborate with many scientists. With Menas Kafatos, who's the professor of computational physics at Chapman University, and with Rudy Tanzi, with whom I did a recent book on the brain. He's a professor of neurology at Harvard, and he also is the director of the genetics lab. We've published several papers, some of them in referee journals, like the Journal of Cosmology, saying that consciousness is a fundamental field of possibilities that collapses upon itself to produce space-time events, which are thought, which then translate into molecules. There's a lot more to say, and because this question is so controversial and asked so frequently, I'll post on the website some of the references on this, because actually I don't believe that quantum mechanics is the key. I think qualia mechanics is the key. Qualia are subjective qualities of consciousness. Like right now you're experiencing sound. That's a subjective quality in your consciousness, or color, or taste, or smell, or emotions, or feelings. These are all subjective qualities of consciousness that then translate into quantum events that then appear as the material world. But the material world is actually a projection of our consciousness. This is a long answer, but this is a very important question asked by many people, and I think it's appropriate that I give a long answer and provide the references as well.